Okay, picture this. You watch a couple interacting for just 5 minutes, and based only on that, you can predict with a mind-blowing 91% accuracy whether their marriage will make it or end in divorce. Sounds like a parlor trick, right? But it's actually not. Thanks to decades of rigorous scientific research by Dr. John Gottman, it is very, very real.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're totally geeking out on the fascinating data pulled right from the famous Seattle Love Lab. We're going to uncover the actual scientific blueprint for a resilient, happy relationship by diving into Dr. Gottman's 7 principles for making marriage work.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the science of lasting love. Then we'll diagnose those toxic communication patterns known as the 4 Horsemen. After that, we're looking at everyday bids for connection, building sound relationship houses, navigating conflict and gridlock, and finally, we'll wrap up with something called the Magic 5 Hours.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the science of lasting love.
To get this groundbreaking data, researchers in the Love Lab literally hooked couples up to physiological monitors. We're talking tracking heart rates, observing microfacial expressions, and analyzing specific word choices. And you know the biggest myth they completely shattered? The idea that happy couples just don't fight, or that having different personalities is what causes divorce? Nope. The research reveals that the core of a happy marriage isn't about avoiding conflict. It's actually about building a really strong underlying friendship where you establish what Gottman calls positive sentiment override. Basically, it's a state where your positive thoughts about your partner naturally outweigh and override the negative ones. So it's really not about if you argue, it's all about how you argue.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 4 Horsemen of Relationships.
Now, when arguments go wrong, they can go really wrong. Dr. Gottman famously coined the term the 4 Horsemen to describe the fatal communication flaws that slowly eat away at a relationship. And honestly, they predict divorce with stunning accuracy. The first horseman, that's criticism. Now, a healthy complaint targets a very specific behavior, but a criticism attacks your partner's core character. You know, using those absolute phrases like you always or you never, that is a massive red flag. The healthy antidote here is what we call a gentle startup. This just means using I statements, describing the situation without pointing fingers, and clearly stating what it is you actually need.
Next up, we have contempt. And wow, this is the most toxic horseman of them all. It is literally the #1 predictor of divorce. Contempt is all about communicating superiority and disgust. Think eye-rolling, heavy sarcasm, mockery. It is so deeply damaging that the research actually shows it weakens the receiving partner's immune system. I mean, that's wild. The cure for this, maintaining a magic ratio. You need 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. This ties directly into Gottman's core principle of actively nurturing fondness and admiration for each other.
The third horseman is defensiveness. Look, when we feel criticized, it is a totally natural human instinct to protect ourselves, right? We shift the blame, we make excuses, or we just counterattack. But defensively reacting basically just tells your partner, hey, the problem isn't me, it's you. The antidote here is incredibly simple, but yeah, it requires some humility. It's just taking responsibility for even a tiny kernel of truth in your partner's complaint.
And the final horseman is stonewalling. This happens when someone just completely checks out. They stop listening, they give a blank stare, and they emotionally withdraw. But here's the thing, they usually aren't doing this just to be mean. Their nervous system is actually experiencing what's called flooding. They are just physiologically overwhelmed. So the absolute necessary antidote here is calling a timeout. You have to take a break for physiological self-soothing until that heart rate normalizes. And interestingly enough, the data notes that about 85% of stonewallers are actually men.
Moving on to Section 3, everyday bids for connection.
So how do we avoid those 4 horsemen entirely? Well, we have to look at those everyday sliding door moments known as bids. A bid is basically any attempt from your partner to connect with you. It could be a direct question, maybe a heavy sigh, or literally just pointing out something out the window. Recognizing these really subtle cues is the absolute foundation of the principle, turn toward instead of away.
Because you basically have 3 ways you can respond to a bid. Turning towards your partner, like saying, wow, that's amazing, when they point at the view, makes a deposit into your emotional bank account. But turning away with just radio silence, or turning against them with hostility, that drastically drains the account. And when that emotional bank account is empty, you are far more vulnerable than next time you have a conflict.
All right, Section 4, building sound relationship houses.
Once you've mastered those everyday micro-interactions, we can look at Dr. Gottman's ultimate blueprint for a resilient marriage. The bedrock foundation of this house is built on Principle 1, enhancing your love maps. Think of a love map as a deeply detailed mental archive of your partner's inner world. Emotionally intelligent couples intentionally make cognitive room for their marriage. They know exactly how their partner takes their coffee, what their biggest current worry is, and what their wildest life dreams are. So let's pause for a second and actually test your love maps right now. Do you know what your partner's absolute biggest worry is today? Or do you know the names of the people they're currently closest to? Life is constantly changing us, so couples have to continuously update these maps. If you don't, you really risk drifting apart during major life transitions, like navigating a career change or having a new baby.
Now, building the higher walls of this relationship house requires the principle of letting your partner influence you. Check this out. Statistically, the data reveals a staggering 81% chance of relationship self-destruction when a partner, and the research specifically points to men in heterosexual relationships here, refuses to share power or accept influence from their spouse. The happiest couples work as a genuine team. They yield to win, meaning they actively search for common ground instead of just demanding their own way. Okay, Section 5, Navigating Conflict and Gridlock.
Look, even with a strong, beautifully built house, the storms are going to come. But successful couples understand the fundamental difference between solvable problems and perpetual problems. Solvable problems are just situational friction, like arguing over the correct way to load the dishwasher. We've all been there. But perpetual problems, those are gridlocked issues rooted in core personality or lifestyle differences. The principles to remember here are to gently solve your solvable problems, and for the perpetual ones, you have to overcome gridlock by establishing an ongoing dialogue, find temporary compromises, and soothe each other so the issue slowly loses its sting.
And finally, Section 6, the magic 5 hours.
So how do you actually protect and nurture your relationship going forward? The researchers found it really only takes an investment of 5 specific hours a week. That's it. This brilliant framework distills that huge, abstract idea of saving a marriage into highly practical weekly habits. It's built on mindful partings in the morning, having stress-reducing reunions at the end of the day, expressing genuine appreciation, showing physical affection, and having a dedicated weekly date to ask questions and update those love maps. Doing all this helps you achieve the final Gottman principle, creating shared meaning. And that is exactly what keeps your relationship securely locked in that state of positive sentiment override.
Ultimately, it all comes down to the friendship that happens outside of the arguments. Dr. Gottman says it best. The key to reviving or divorce-proofing a relationship is not in how you handle disagreements, but in how you are with each other when you're not fighting. Emotionally intelligent marriages aren't built on dramatic Hollywood-style romantic gestures. They're built primarily in the small, seemingly mundane, everyday moments of fondness, admiration, and respect.
So I want to leave you with this final, vital question to reflect on for your own life. The next time your partner makes a subtle bid for your attention, maybe just sighing heavily or pointing something out on the TV, how will you turn towards them today? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.